I'm writing this only a few hours after what might honestly be the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. It probably sounds dramatic, but in the moment it felt absolutely insane. My family and I just pulled into our campsite for the week, and I'm still on edge, glancing over my shoulder every few seconds. Deep down, I'm sure we'll be fine, but I wanted to get this out while everything's still sharp in my mind. It just happened, and this is my first time really replaying it, so forgive me if the details feel a little scattered. Late last night, my wife, our two kids, and I left home for a week-long camping trip. The kids were thrilled. This was their first time coming along. My wife and I have done plenty of these trips over the years, but we agreed to wait until the kids were a bit older before dragging them into the wilderness with us. That time finally came, so we packed up, loaded the truck, and started the 7-hour drive. A little after midnight, the initial hype faded. The music was off, the kids passed out in the back, and eventually my wife nodded off in the passenger seat too. I didn't mind. It gave me a chance to listen to an audiobook I'd been ignoring for months. Before I knew it, we were almost at our destination, and I realized they'd basically slept the entire ride. They'd wake up for a minute here and there to ask where we were, then conk out again. About 30 minutes from the campsite, I hit a driver's worst nightmare on a trip: a flat tire. Luckily, I had a spare, so in theory it was nothing more than a hassle. Still, it pissed me off. The truck jerked, I briefly lost control, and we skidded toward the side of the road before I managed to pull it back and get us safely onto the shoulder. Somehow no one woke up. I got out quietly, opened the back, and dug the spare out from under all our luggage. While I was getting everything ready, I found myself wondering what I could have hit. The flat had come completely out of nowhere. The longer I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. I swapped the ruined tire out and was just tightening the last lug when I heard someone softly clear their throat behind me. It sounded almost like my wife, so I turned, expecting to see her. Instead, a small woman stood there on the edge of the headlights. Her dreadlocks were wild and unkempt, and a tattoo climbed up the middle of her neck, disappearing under her jaw. Hello," I said, unsure. She smiled and answered in this overly sweet, almost childish voice. "Hi, I'm Summer. You look like you could use some help." I forced a polite smile. "Thanks, but I think we're good." Everything about the situation felt off. She kept glancing to the opposite side of the road, like she was checking in with someone I couldn't see. I followed her gaze a few times but didn't spot anyone or anything out there. She wouldn't drop it. She kept insisting she should help, never losing that fake, dainty tone. I kept politely refusing, focused on finishing up and packing my tools away. Finally, I started putting everything back into the truck, ready to get out of there. That's when her voice changed. "I think you really need my help," she said again, but now her tone was harsh and angry, almost snarling. "Let me help you." I'd had enough. I turned to her and used the firmest voice I could muster. "Listen, lady. You need to leave. My family is in that truck, and I'm not in the mood for whatever this is. If you don't go right now, I'm calling the police, or I'll handle it myself." I figured that would scare her off. Instead, she started laughing. Not just a chuckle, loud, ugly laughter that made my skin crawl. I decided I was done. I turned my back on her, opened the driver's door, and reached for the keys I'd left in the cup holder, so I just have to hit the start button. Out of sheer paranoia, I glanced back. She was already mid-swing. She'd grabbed my lug wrench, and it was arcing straight toward my head. She didn't seem completely there mentally, so her aim was off enough that I managed to throw up my hand and catch the blow before it connected with my skull. I redirected it, then kicked out hard at her legs, connecting with her knees and shin. She went down, at least I think she did. I heard her grunt and then scramble to her feet, and the next second she was sprinting toward that same dark patch on the side of the road she'd been staring at. I didn't wait to see if she was alone. I dove into the truck, slammed the door, mashed the start button, and tore out of there as fast as I could. I checked my mirrors constantly, expecting headlights to appear behind me or someone to step out into the road again. But the last 30 minutes of the drive were mercifully quiet. My wife woke up sometime later, just before we reached the site, and I told her everything. She was furious I hadn't called the police on the spot, and honestly, she kind of looked at me like she wasn't sure whether to believe the whole story. As soon as we arrived at the campsite, though, she called the police herself and gave them a full report. Description of the woman, the neck tattoo, the exact stretch of road. Now I can't shake the feeling that this woman might somehow show up here. She clearly saw all the camping gear in the back of my truck. I didn't think of it in the moment, but looking back, I can't help wondering if she somehow caused that flat tire in the first place. I have no proof, of course. It's just a gnawing suspicion. I'm going to try my best to enjoy this trip, but I wanted to get this all written down while it's still vivid. I keep replaying the same questions. What did she want? My truck, our gear. Something worse. Wish me luck this week. If anything else happens, I'll update. But for now, I really hope I never see that woman again. This July will mark 6 years since my husband and I got married, and I can honestly say marrying him was the best decision I've ever made. I love our life together. That said, we almost never made it to the altar because of a terrible choice he made while we were engaged. Anyone who's planned a wedding knows how exhausting it is. Even something simple ends up eating time and money like crazy. I was drowning in logistics, so I told my fiancé to handle just one thing, the photographer. I take care of pretty much everything else. That was by design. I adore him, but if it were up to him, our entire wedding would have been tacos and 80s music and not much else. Fun for a party, not so much for the big day. I gave him a list of photographers I'd either found online or had personally recommended by friends and coworkers. All he had to do was pick one we could afford. One night he came home acting like he'd just landed us the deal of a lifetime. He told me he'd been talking to a coworker who knew a guy who shot weddings on the side. This man was well under our budget and supposedly had experience. I didn't love the idea. I hadn't seen a portfolio. Didn't know his name beyond what my fiancé mentioned. Didn't even know for sure if he owned a decent camera. My fiancé assured me he had seen his work, that it was good, and that the only reason he wasn't online was because it was still just a side hustle. I was immediately suspicious, but I also trusted my fiancé. One of his best and worst qualities is that he sees the good in everyone, even when they don't deserve it. I wasn't thrilled, but we were saving a lot of money, and at that point I didn't have the energy to start the process over. As the wedding approached, I realized I still hadn't met this mysterious photographer. That started to really bother me. What if he flaked the day of the wedding? What if he was awful in person? I begged my fiancé to set up a meeting. We finally arranged to meet the guy at the park where we'd be having our ceremony. The moment I saw him, all my alarms went off. He was off-putting. That sounds mean, but it's the only way to put it. His fingernails were long and filthy. He had a few front teeth missing, and he looked to be at least in his 40s. Based on the way my fiancé had described him, I'd pictured some young, hungry photographer trying to grow his business. Not a grizzled, unkempt man who barely made eye contact. He didn't say much, just nodded along as I talked through what we wanted. I kept catching what felt like strange, lingering looks from him. I told myself I was just reacting to his appearance, but the uneasy feeling stuck. At the end of the meeting, he pulled out his phone to show me some of his portfolio. I expected wedding photos. Instead, the first few shots were bizarre, artsy photos. Dead animals, burned out buildings, weird, unsettling imagery. Eventually, he did scroll to some wedding photos, and I have to admit, they were beautiful. That calmed me down just enough to move forward. About a month before the wedding, my friends and I went to Ocean City, Maryland, for my bachelorette party. We rented a condo right on the water and planned for beach days and wild nights out. Everything was perfect until late Saturday afternoon. We were lying on the beach when one of my friends said she thought some creepy guy was taking pictures of us. He was standing closer to the condo building, facing the ocean. There was a good distance between him and the shoreline, so I assumed he was just taking scenic shots of the waves. My friends couldn't relax, though. Finally, one of them said she was going to talk to him just so we could stop worrying. Another friend went with her. I watched them speak to him. After a minute, he walked away. They came back and told us he'd apologized, showed them the photos on his camera. It was just the ocean and some boats, and said he'd move further down the beach so he wouldn't bother us. "See," I said. "I told you you were overthinking it." On the walk back to the condo, though, one of my friends casually mentioned something that made my stomach knot. "He gave me a creepy vibe," she said. "And did you see his nails? Long and disgusting. Looked like they hadn't been cut in forever." Immediately, I thought of our wedding photographer. I told myself it was just coincidence, but my intuition screamed otherwise. That night at a local bar, every flash of a camera or phone snap made my heart jump. The longer we stayed out, the more on edge I got. I finally told the girls I wanted to head back to the condo. We decided to just make drinks there and talk instead. Around 1 a.m., we heard a knock at the back door. We all froze. Nobody should have been knocking at that hour. We weren't being loud enough for a noise complaint. We crept to the door and looked out. No one. We chalked it up to drunk kids messing around or our nerves getting the best of us, and we went to bed. 30 or 40 minutes later, one of my friends, who was sleeping on the couch because we were short a bedroom, woke up screaming. We ran into the living room. A man was standing there with a camera in his hands. It was our wedding photographer. In the middle of us shouting and panicking, he just kept repeating, "I figured you'd want some pictures of the memories. I'm just trying to take some photos, relax." One of my friends ran into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and chased him out of the condo. We called the police immediately and told them everything. We went home the next day, and I relived the whole thing for my fiancé. I was furious with him in that moment, even though logically I knew there was no way he could have known the guy would do something like that. The local police were notified, and before long they picked the man up. His excuse was that he was just trying to take fun pictures and didn't mean to scare us or break in. No one bought that. We were able to find another photographer in time for the wedding, and I eventually let go of my anger at my fiancé. He'd made a naive choice, but he hadn't meant any harm. If you're planning a wedding, though, please learn from me. Know who you're hiring. Saving a bit of money is not worth what we went through. This happened when I was 16, working my first job at a 24-hour breakfast place about 20 minutes from home. I'd been there about a month when I started noticing the same man coming in every single day. He always asked for me. At first he seemed friendly, maybe just a lonely regular. But things got creepy fast. He started asking my coworkers personal questions about me, where I lived, if I had a boyfriend, what my schedule was. When he was there, he'd sit for hours, barely touching his food, just staring at me as I worked. I told my managers over and over how uncomfortable he made me. They shrugged it off. He spent a lot of money there every week, and we were a small, struggling local restaurant. They weren't willing to risk that income. I tried switching my shifts to times I thought he wouldn't show up. Somehow, he always adapted. He'd figure out my new schedule almost immediately and reappear. It felt like I couldn't escape him. Things came to a head the day he tried to take pictures up my skirt. I was standing at his table taking his order, looking down at my notepad, when I saw his phone move under me in my peripheral vision. My brain took a second to register what was happening, and then I just exploded. I screamed and instinctively kicked his hand. My manager came rushing out as I ran toward the back, shaking and crying. He stopped me, asked what was wrong, and I finally blurted everything out. Only then did they take it seriously. He stormed over to the man and started yelling, telling him to get out immediately. I hid in the back, but I could hear every word. The guy denied everything, said he didn't take any pictures and wasn't leaving. The second my manager threatened to call the police and have them search his phone, he changed his tune and bolted. My manager came back to me, apologized for not acting sooner, and said he was sorry it had gotten to this point. I thanked him, but I was still angry that it had taken an incident like that for anyone to care. They let me go home for the day, and my manager walked me to my car in case the man was waiting outside. He wasn't, but I appreciated it. As soon as I got in the car, I broke down crying. I told my manager I thought we should still call the police. He said he didn't want the drama, that it would just make the restaurant look bad. I didn't care about the restaurant's reputation. I drove straight to the police station and filed a report. The officers there took me seriously, and that alone felt like a relief. One of them warned me I needed to quit before this turned into a full-blown stalking situation. I wanted to, but jobs in our town were scarce, and it had taken me forever to land this one. I needed the money badly. As much as I hate to admit it, I was now doing the same thing my managers had done, putting money ahead of my safety. I told them I didn't think I could quit yet. To their credit, they didn't just let me walk out the door. It was a very small town, and one of the officers actually knew my dad from back in the day. They offered to swing by the restaurant at the end of my shifts for a while to make sure I got to my car safely. You might think there's no way they'd do that, but in our town, they really didn't have much else going on. For the next couple of weeks, there was no sign of the man. The officers kept their word and were there every night when I clocked out. I finally started to relax, thinking maybe he'd moved on. Then came a Friday night. My manager and coworkers all left, and I was the last one there, closing. All I had left to do was clean the bathroom before locking up. I saw the familiar police car pull up outside and felt a wave of relief, knowing I'd be leaving soon. I grabbed the cleaning supplies and headed into the bathroom. The floors were already swept and mopped, so I just had to wipe down the sinks and toilets. I opened the first stall and started cleaning. That's when I heard it, this soft, almost polite cough, like someone clearing their throat. My heart went into overdrive. I wanted nothing more than to run out then and there, but if someone was in there, I didn't want them to know I'd heard them. I finished up as quietly as I could, stepped out of the stall, and started inching toward the door. Just as my hand closed around the handle, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. It was him. I don't know how long he'd been hiding there, and I really don't want to know what he'd planned to do. I told him we were closed and asked what he was doing there. Instead of answering, he started touching himself, staring straight at me. "I just want you so bad," he said. "I'm so into you. You're so sexy. Please just let me have you for a little bit." He paused. "Or I can always just take you." Tears burned at my eyes. I was racking my brain for any way to get past him and out the door to the officer waiting outside. Fight or flight kicked in. I yanked the door open and ran. I sprinted down the hallway toward the front of the restaurant, hearing his footsteps thunder after me. He was closing in. I could feel him almost on top of me. I was just a few feet from the front door when he tackled me from behind. His full weight slammed me to the floor. I screamed, kicked, did everything I could to fight him off, but he was heavy and strong. Frantically, I looked around for anything I could use as a weapon. The only thing within reach was a pen I'd dropped earlier in my shift. I grabbed it without thinking and drove it straight into his eye. He screamed and jerked away from me. I scrambled to my feet, flung the front door open, and shouted for the officer. When he saw me, bleeding and hysterical, he jumped out of his car, drew his gun, called for backup, and ran inside. He held the man at gunpoint until more officers and an ambulance arrived. I ended up with some scrapes and bruises, nothing more. The man was arrested, and as far as I know, he's still waiting for trial. I can only hope the justice system actually does its job and keeps him locked up for a long time, so he never has the chance to do this to anyone else. This happened about a year ago while I was driving home from work late one night. My commute is usually around 20 minutes. Most of it is on the highway, but the last 5 miles are on a smaller, quiet road with nothing on either side but woods. I just turned off the highway onto that stretch when I noticed red and blue lights flickering up ahead. I assumed it was a police officer who had someone pulled over. As I got closer, though, something looked off. The vehicle with the flashing lights didn't look like a squad car. It looked like a normal car with some kind of light bar slapped on top. There was a man standing by the roadside in a reflective safety vest. As I slowed down, he stepped into the lane and motioned for me to stop. I did, mostly out of confusion. The area was extremely rural, just trees and darkness in every direction. After coming to a full stop, I rolled down my window to see what he wanted. He had dark hair, a black cap, and a black jacket under the vest. He lifted a flashlight and shined it right into my face, practically blinding me. He gave me his name, but I honestly don't remember it. He talked fast, saying they were doing searches in the area and on other nearby roads. He told me there had been criminal activity and they were looking for the person responsible. I asked if he was with the police. He said no, but claimed he was working with them. Then he asked if I would consent to him searching the back of my car and told me to unlock the rear doors and trunk. As he was walking toward the back of my car, he reached his hand out toward the rear door handle. Every instinct I had screamed at me to get out of there. "No," I said sharply, and slammed my foot on the gas. I sped away, hearing him yell after me to stop as I left him in the middle of the road. There was no way that man had any real connection to law enforcement. He hadn't given me any specifics about the supposed criminal activity, just vague phrases. I have no idea what he had planned if I'd let him into my car. As soon as I was a safe distance away, I called 911 and reported what I'd seen, his description, the fake light bar, the location. The dispatcher told me they'd send an officer out to check right away. I drove the rest of the way home with my heart pounding, wondering if anyone else might have fallen for his act and stopped. I still don't know what exactly he was trying to do. His story about illegal activity felt like a flimsy cover to get unsuspecting drivers to open their vehicles for him. So far, nothing like that has happened again. I just really hope the police actually found him so he can't try that stunt on anyone else. I'm an 18-year-old culinary student, and this happened back in 2009. Our program had an underground parking garage attached to a lounge behind the cafeteria. Couples liked to sneak down there because it was always half dark and nearly empty. I hated it. The back door that led into the garage was barely lit, and almost nobody parked down there. As a horror fan, I couldn't help thinking it was the kind of setting where bad things happened in movies. One day after class, I was walking down the hall with my knife roll slung over my shoulder when this kid I didn't know hurried up to me, acting all intense and confrontational. I tensed and gripped one of the knife handles through the case, ready to defend myself if I had to. He stopped short and just held out a folded piece of paper. I took it and opened it. "Meet me in the lounge," it said. I stared at it, then looked back at him and asked who had given it to him. Was it my boyfriend? Someone from the culinary program? A friend from high school? He shook his head and said he had no idea who it was, just that he'd been asked to deliver it. Then he told me I should go. I pressed him for details. What did the person look like? Did he know their name? But he clammed up and refused to say anything else. I gave a nervous laugh, shoved the note in my pocket and walked past him, heading toward the library where it would be more public and hopefully safer. He followed me. He kept asking if I was going to the lounge, insisting that I should, saying weird stuff like it was my destiny. I sped up, glaring at him, and cut down the stairs toward the cafeteria, hoping to find some classmates and ditch him. He matched my pace the whole way. "I don't understand why you're not going," he said. "They're waiting." "I don't want to," I snapped. "Leave me alone." I stepped into the cafeteria. My skin was crawling. I pulled out my phone, intending to call campus security or the police, but then I saw a classmate of mine and ran straight to him instead. The kid followed right behind me, pointing toward the direction of the lounge like a human compass, and telling me I was going the wrong way. I immediately told my classmate what was happening. He stepped between me and the kid and told him to back off, that I already had a boyfriend and wasn't interested. The kid just stared at me and said, "They're waiting for you. Don't take too long." That line gave me chills. My classmate walked me to our student-run restaurant and grabbed 3 more classmates to come with us to check out the lounge, just in case it was some bizarre misunderstanding. We all went together. The lounge was completely empty. That was somehow even worse. I freaked out and decided I needed to go home. They walked me through campus to the regular parking lot, while I called my parents to come pick me up. One of my classmates stayed with me until they arrived. The other went to our instructors to report what had happened. He came back and said the faculty would look into it, and told me to report any suspicious behavior or if I saw that kid again. A few days later, I found out through the school newspaper that several women had been assaulted in that exact area. Students who had parked in the underground garage during finals and come in through the lounge entrance. The paper kept the details light, and there was no word on who the attacker was or whether they'd been caught. I felt sick. I went to the newspaper staff and told them about the note and the kid, but they said they hadn't heard anything like that. As far as I know, they never identified the person responsible for the assaults. My mom has told me over and over how glad she is that I trusted my gut and didn't go to that lounge alone. The women who were attacked all recovered physically, thank God. They were jumped but not robbed, and their injuries were relatively minor. I never saw that strange messenger kid again. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that I was deliberately targeted for something. I'm just grateful that in the end, everyone survived, and that I wasn't one of the victims. A lot of people complain about the city, but after what happened to me and my friends a year ago, I'll take concrete and traffic over the middle of nowhere any day. One of my close friends had just ended a 7-year relationship with her fiancé. She was wrecked, understandably. Our other friend, the outdoorsy one, suggested we all get away for a night and camp in the woods to clear her head. Surprisingly, the heartbroken friend agreed. We found a cute little cottage in the middle of the woods and booked it for one night. I was excited to spend time with my girls without the usual city bar scene and getting all dressed up. Once we got there, though, I knew it wouldn't last. My newly single friend was restless within an hour. No Wi-Fi, no distractions, just trees and silence. It wasn't her thing, especially in the middle of a breakup. Sure enough, she pulled out her phone and started looking up local bars. She found a dive bar in a nearby town. And honestly, I joked that this was my kind of camping. We drove over, and it was exactly what you'd expect from a tiny town bar. Mostly older locals, a jukebox, cheap drinks, and not much else. My friend started talking to a middle-aged guy at the bar. He was ruggedly handsome in that weathered, small-town way. Whether it was the alcohol or the emotional vulnerability, or both, she was flirting hard. They chatted for quite a while, but eventually she came back over and said she was ready to go back to the cottage. On the drive, we teased her about her bar boyfriend, and she just laughed and brushed it off. Back at the cottage, we poured one last glass of wine and then decided to call it a night. It was very clear that true camping people we were not. We all ended up deciding to crash in the living room together, one on the couch, one on the loveseat, one on the recliner. We fell asleep pretty quickly. Sometime after 3 a.m., I felt someone shaking me awake. It was one of my friends, eyes wide, whispering that she'd heard the front doorknob rattling. I told her she was probably imagining it. Then I heard it too. The knob was turning and shaking over and over, someone really trying to get in. We were too terrified to move. We scooted together on the couch, clutching the blanket up to our faces like that would protect us. The place was so small you could walk around the entire cottage in less than a minute. We realized whoever was outside had that same thought. We heard footsteps circling the exterior, each twig snapping underfoot amplified by our panic. The steps moved toward the back of the cottage, right behind the couch where we were huddled. There was a big window back there with curtains drawn. We heard shuffling at the window, fingers moving along the curtain trying to pry it open. Something in me snapped, and I yelled that we were calling the police. The noise stopped for a moment. Then we heard a man's voice whispering from just outside the glass. He whispered my recently separated friend's name. Instantly, I thought of the guy from the bar. There was no other way someone would know her name and where we were staying. I grabbed the curtain and yanked it open. He froze like a deer in headlights. It was him, the man from the bar. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then he put both hands up in a half-surrender, half-defensive gesture and took off running. I didn't see a car. He just disappeared into the trees. We called the police immediately and reported what we believed was an attempted break-in. We didn't sleep after that. As soon as the sun came up and the officers were done taking our statements, we packed up and left. On the drive home, we started to piece everything together properly, and that's when the real fear hit. We'd gotten back from the bar sometime before midnight. He didn't try to get in until after 3. That meant he had to have followed us from the bar to find out where we were staying, then waited outside in the dark for at least 3 hours until he was sure we were asleep before trying the door and the window. Knowing he was probably out there all that time makes my skin crawl. We found out later the back window had been left unlocked. If my friend hadn't woken up at the sound of the doorknob, he likely would have been inside sooner or later. In a messed up way, that night ended up helping my heartbroken friend. She was so grateful that we all got out unharmed that it jolted her into seeing her life differently. The breakup didn't seem quite as world-ending compared to what could have happened in that cottage. It was the start of her finally moving on. For a bit of context, I'm 21 and my fiancé is 28. At the end of February, we adopted the sweetest 2-year-old German Shepherd. She's incredibly smart and loyal, and she's glued to me in particular. She's very much a mama's girl. This happened just a few weeks ago, and I still catch myself replaying it in my head. We live together in an apartment complex that's pretty dog-friendly. There's a small dog park and a big grassy area right outside our building where we usually take her to run and do her business. That day, my fiancé and I decided to take her out together for some air. It was sweltering, easily 90 degrees or more, so I was just wearing a sports bra and shorts. I was walking her back and forth on the hill while she sniffed around and went to the bathroom. Out of nowhere, she shifted her attention toward a row of parked cars. She loves other dogs but could not care less about people, so I figured there must be another dog over there. Instead of wandering off to explore like usual, she stepped deliberately between me and the parked cars, her whole body tense, eyes locked in that direction. A few seconds later, a man stepped out from between 2 vehicles. I hadn't seen him before because he'd been partially hidden in some bushes and shadows. During all this, my fiancé was a bit zoned out and hadn't noticed anything. The man walked slowly along the road that ran beside the grassy area. My dog tracked his every move, keeping herself firmly between him and me like a furry bodyguard. He stopped a short distance away, took out his phone, and lifted it toward the sky like he was taking a picture of the clouds. My fiancé, ever the goof, looked up too and commented on how pretty the sky was. Because my dog was so locked onto this guy, I watched him instead. Something felt wrong. My dog never cared about strangers walking nearby. For her to fixate on one person like that meant something was off. As I watched, he subtly tilted his phone downward. Instead of aiming at the sky, he angled it toward me. I know I wasn't exactly dressed conservatively, but I was just taking my dog out in disgusting heat. That didn't give anyone the right to photograph me. Our eyes met the second he tried to get the shot. He visibly flinched, like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Then he hurried off down the road, my dog and I both watching him go. I haven't seen him around the complex since. I honestly don't think he lives here. He seemed like some random creep who happened to be there that day. When we got back inside, my German Shepherd got a ridiculous amount of treats and praise. Whatever she sensed before I did, I'm grateful for it. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you stuck with the video all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like, sharing it around, commenting, and subscribing if you feel like supporting the channel. If you have any feedback for me, Feel free to drop it down in the comments as well. If you'd like to submit a story of your own or contact me for any other reason, you can find links to all of my social media in the description below: Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter. Send me a message on any of those, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. If you do decide to send in a story, please include in the subject line what you'd like the story to be titled. If it has a title, what general category it falls under, and how you'd like to be credited in the description. Try to add as much detail as you're comfortable sharing, and use the best grammar and spelling you can. That really helps increase the chances of your story making it into a future video. That's about all I've got for now. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.